Good morning, everybody. I don't think it's wrong to say that one of the things that Making a Murderer #2 really sort of cleared up for us was the problem with AEDPA, the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, and really how short-sighted in many ways that particular act was. It was just a knee-jerk reaction to an absolute, horrible tragedy and very heinous crime. But it was, I don't think the lawmakers that were advocating for it quite realised what the knock-on effect would be. We hear from one or two politicians that fully understand the implications of such an act. And unfortunately, it has been abused ever since by courts. And it reminded me of one of my pupils when he was a law student. He told me about an incident that happened at exam time. There was a fellow that was a couple of years ahead of him at law school, and this fellow was a bit of a character. During examinations on this one day, they had an exam 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and so everybody sat down all the students are ready to do the exam, and the invigilator has just gone round with all of the papers and he's just about to say, right, time starts now, turn your papers over, when this fella stood up and said, oh, excuse me, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I demand my right to a quarter gill of port for fortification, because apparently back in the 1700s there was this law, there was this rule within the college that was the idea back then. So anyway, the invigilator got in touch with the caretaker, and the caretaker got in touch with the head, and eventually 20 minutes later, this student was provided with his nip of port from the head of the university's drinks cabinet. But of course there was much disgruntlement amongst everybody else who were held back 20 minutes to do their exam. But it was just the fact that this law from way back was totally inappropriate. I mean, how relevant is it that the same law that dealt with this Oklahoma bombing, Timothy McVeigh, should years later be applied to Brendan Dassey? There is no relevance there whatsoever, is there? So I was glad that Making a Murderer pointed that out. There's been questions about the interrogation techniques, the Reed techniques versus other techniques. I think generally speaking, we want the police interrogators to get to the truth, and so if they do have to use sometimes tricks to try and get them, I don't really have too much of a problem with that, particularly if they are trying to get something out of somebody who is almost certainly guilty. It's just that when it comes to Brendan, I've compared Bert and Ernie's effort in their interrogation of Brendan, and in fact their whole investigation, as being, I compare it to trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't fit. And of course, Mark Wiegert on the stand admits that he doesn't know if Brendan was telling the truth or whether he was lying. Fassbender, in his TV interview, admits that he doesn't know what bits of Brendan's confession he thinks are true and which bits he thinks are false. So they just don't know any of that interrogation, if any of it was true or false. They just don't know. Obviously, looking at I've gone on about this before, in The Staircase, the docuseries, David Rudolph makes a very valid point that when it comes to jury verdicts, if every country was to adopt the same as Scotland, the guilty versus not proven, that would get rid of double jeopardy. One of the problems that they have with the guilty, not guilty, is that once you're found not guilty, you can't be tried for that crime again, even if more evidence comes to light. Well, that, of course, is a complete nonsense. It puts pressure on the prosecutors to make sure, to absolutely make sure that somebody is found guilty. And, you know, if they think that somebody is guilty, but they've not quite got all the evidence, then what do they go and do? They go and make up some more evidence. I saw a very interesting video by Laura Perplexed about exactly that, about how you know, the corruption within various you know, law enforcement. I don't think it was just Wisconsin, I think it was other places as well. But the sort of things that the police and prosecutors were doing to secure a conviction. And I'm sure a lot of it is motivated by the idea that they don't want somebody who's guilty getting off with it just on sometimes technicalities. So definitely a guilty, not proven verdict. You know, if it's not proven, then yes, that person walks free, but they could still be tried later on down the line. And talking about being tried later on down the line, our law student, 2 weeks after the exam, was called to the head's office. And the head said to him, right, I suppose you know why you're here, don't you? And the fellow said, well, yes, for my stunt that I pulled at the exam, the afternoon exam, you know, making the students wait 20 minutes while I had my nip of port. And the head says, oh, no, nothing to do with that. No. He said, I've brought you here because I am fining you a bottle of Jill, a bottle of port. You know, not just a Jill, but a full bottle of port. And I'm fining you a bottle of port because you were not wearing your sword and scabbard. Catch you later. Bye for now.